Let's welcome back our Line Opinion panel for the week. Another legislative session has come and gone, and with it, few to zero new standards or regulations on the fossil fuel industry. Senate Bill 418, which would have updated the state's Oil and Gas Act to ensure public health safety measures for nearby communities, that died in committee. Senate Bill 164 met a similar fate. That would have increased royalty rates on oil and gas produced on state lands from 20% to 25%. While requiring operators to pay royalties on gas released during production. Didn't happen. Meanwhile, both state departments tasked with overseeing oil and gas are set to receive a funding boost in the budget. 21% for the Environment Department and a near 15% bump for the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department. Now, Andy, when you consider the record-breaking $9.6 billion budget bill sent to the governor, it's important to remember, according to the legislature's website, oil and gas direct and indirect revenue make up 25 to 30% of the state's income. So simply put, it's a bit of a balancing act. Now, with the failure of those regulatory bills I mentioned, are we keeping that balance? Did the oil and gas folks come out very much ahead here, or our ability to watch over them okay?
I guess it depends on your perspective, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure oil and gas would argue differently.
Right.
I think one of the things that I see in a lot of the coverage is lack of enforcement. So you can add these regulations. We have regulations, but what happens if they violate them? Apparently nothing or not much. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably maybe not a full win for the oil and gas industry, but I think the biggest win is the lack of enforcement.
Senator, for perspective, you've been at this for a long time, watching these people and coming up with legislation. Did they get away with one this session? That might be a little strong, but you know, there's a lot of things folks were expecting to happen with environment legislation, just flat out didn't happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you know, and the governor is going to fall short of her goal in terms of curtailing carbon emissions by 2030, unless there is some more enforcement of the methane rule and other rules. But the only enforcement now is the feds. And when the feds find somebody like, you know, Matador or settle with Matador, they get the money. We get a very small portion, I think, of that 6.5 million settlement that happened this week.
Right.
New Mexico got 1.3. And so, you know, I think that we are in trouble. There was a big snafu in those percentage increases that you said that the Environment and the Energy and Minerals Department were going to get, because if you read when they finally read the fine print, most of that had to go into salary increases. 6%, the 6% increase that all state employees got.
Right.
So that did not allow them to hire the number of regulators, the number of people to watch over these folks that they need. We have far fewer people in either of those departments than other states, and it shows. And basically, at the end of the session here, the Environment Department head, Kenny, I think his name is, said basically, you know, we're going to rely on people now, anybody that can fly over and see these plumes and see, then they're going to have to take these folks to court.
Wow.
Because basically the Environment Department doesn't have enough people, and that's a bad situation in New Mexico.
That is interesting. And Merritt, on Senator's point, when questioning how the state's Oil Conservation Division was prosecuting violators of the act, Capitol and Maine were told by a spokesperson that, quote, there are no OCD employees dedicated exclusively to waste rule enforcement, end quote. To Senator's point, if you don't, and Andy's point, if you don't have people to enforce, what's the point of rules and law? You got to, you know, what happened in the conversation about budget for these folks?
Well, I think there is a balancing act, as you alluded to earlier, and I think it is going to get better. In January, ExxonMobil announced it will not flare natural gas. It is stopping. There will also be a new pipeline completed for natural gas in November of this year in the Permian, and that will make a big difference. One of the issues we have is there is not enough pipeline capacity to siphon off all the natural gas. And so when you're pumping for consumption, and we're pumping oil for consumption because we want gas prices to go down. We want to do it with American oil, right? We're tired of high gas prices, right? We want the oil, gas and oil revenues for New Mexico, right? So it is a balancing act. And not all of the producers are an ExxonMobil or a Shell, and they may not have had time or the revenue to put on the compressors they need to divert the gas to a pipeline. So there are a lot of things in play that I think also regulators have to consider, that the smaller producers may not be there. You know, it should be noted, ExxonMobil does not support fining producers who are producing for consumption. And, you know, I think that's fair. It's kind of like, well, what do you want? Do you want cheap gasoline, or do you want zero methane? Because when there isn't enough pipeline, there's only so much we can do. So that's a factor that has not been reported in the coverage of this story.
Interesting point there. Andy, let me ask you about this. There's two different stories being told here. Companies have until 2026 to reach a 98% capture rate for all natural fuel pulled from the ground, as Merritt was talking about. Of the 375 companies who have filed methane waste reports with OCD in 2021 and last year, 262 companies reported capture rates of 98% or better. Meanwhile, EPA released data last year from inspections of the Permian Basin showing 85% of leaking tanks or unlit flares seen by the agency did not file reports with OCD as required. Can we trust either of these reports? That's,
I mean, I think it's fair for folks that are sort of questioning whether that's accurate or not. And not so much enforcement, but again, regulators, to the budget to have people go out in there and actually put their own eyes on that, right? It does. I think I would forgive folks who would say that doesn't seem right. How do you go from this to this, and all of a sudden everybody's in compliance and everything's fine?
That's right.
So yeah, probably need to have some people out there checking those.
Well,
please.
you know, when everything is based on self-reporting,
Right.
It's all self-reporting.
Thank you.
And they don't have anyone in the Environment Department or the Energy and Minerals Department to even check to see whether this is true or not. And then when you have anyone who can fly over there and spot the flares, there's something wrong with this picture. Somebody is not telling the truth, and somebody's not doing their job. You know, it's gonna take a lot of work in order to get them into compliance.
Well, we have an interesting example just this week, Merritt. EPA announced this week 2 companies have resolved clean air violations, paying nearly $7 million in fines combined. Meanwhile, the state estimates put oil and gas revenues at close to $47 billion for 2022. Is this just the cost of doing business, these fines?
Right, and that's also a way to look at it. If you're making enough money from production, this is a minor cost and perhaps cheaper. And so, you know, to what everyone is saying about going out and actually seeing it as it happens and managing it. If you're a mid-sized producer and you can't afford what ExxonMobil is doing, this may be a cheaper way for you to operate. But again, there is the issue. There is not enough pipeline capacity right now for the current production, and so
Very
until
simple, isn't it?
until there is sufficient pipeline, it will get better by the end of this year, and as infrastructure grows in the Permian Basin to meet the surging demand, and while we still have a huge demand for oil, this is going to continue to be an issue.
Let me ask you guys something. You all know David Abbey. He is the retiring Legislative Finance Committee Director. An interesting cat, always been great with the press here over the years. Andy, he told the Santa Fe New Mexican revenue from the state's oil and gas resources was a blessing, but he was worried the state risked becoming too dependent on it. And we've heard that from others, but coming from him just has a bit of a different ring to it. There's something about that.
Sure, and I think also if you listen closely, sometimes there are the Republicans in oil and gas and those areas of the state. Bill Scher is one that comes to mind. He's a big fan of the industry, but also free to say this isn't going to last forever. We need to figure something else out. So there are lots of people that, even if they're like David Abbey says, this was a blessing, but it's not a forever thing.
Senator, what do you think about this? Looking at future legislators, this is legislature sessions. Sorry, if the state's budget continues to balloon, that's one thing with dealing with these people. But if, ironically, our oil and gas revenues start to tail off, what does that do to regulatory stuff at that point? It's either the dilemma here: do we get after them while the money is good, or do we get after them while they're not doing so good?
Well, that's of course, and the industry will say when there's a bust period, how could you possibly make us pay any more,
That's
or our jobs are already down, and so they have it both ways right now. And David Abbey is well experienced at the boom and bust cycle. It's not just, now we're in the boom cycle, but he has experienced the bust cycle as well. And so has New Mexico in the late 2000s. And so, we have to invest some of this money in alternatives. And I'm hoping that we can do a better job on that.
Watchdogging and regulating the very people who supply you the most money, it's fraught. I mean, it's just, how do you do it actually?
I want to go back to the Senate Finance Committee taking the House budget and cutting the money going to the reserve by 44%. To spend more money on our biggest budget ever. That is the type of behavior we cannot have.
Yeah, I'm glad you got that in as a last note there. Thank you again to our Line Opinion panelists. We'll be back here at the table for one more conversation on a vote to increase the salaries of Albuquerque City Councilors and the mayor. That's in less than 10 minutes.